Okay, folks, we are live here on Jordan Sorcery. I'm joined today by Antony Johnston, the author of a brand new game book with, I would say, a difference compared to a lot of the kind of game books we would normally talk about here on Jordan Sorcery. But we're going to be having a little bit of a chat, and we're also going to be doing a sort of live playthrough, an actual play of the opening sections of Antony's book. So can you solve the murder, Antony? Can you tell us a little bit about it as we sort of before we get into it properly?
Well, I can solve it. The question is whether you and the audience can. So yeah, here's the book. Can you solve the murder? It came out here in the UK a couple of weeks ago now, and it will be out in the US. Oh, actually, I'll get the US version. Hang on. So in the US, it looks like that. The Canadian version, very similar but different color scheme, yellow and black rather than blue and black. Um, and the US version will be out on July 1st, US and Canada.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, it's a game book. We're calling it an interactive novel, uh, just which I know some people is a phrase that some people use for game books anyway, because what marks this out as different to game books you've played before is that it is a full-length crime novel. It is much longer than most game books you'll have read, although not completely. You know, I know John Green, who you had on here last week, has written some very long game books, including his Dracula one, which I absolutely adore. Um, but it is longer than your average game book, certainly, because it is a full-length crime novel. But it's a game book. It's interactive. You take on the role of a detective chief inspector, uh, trying to solve a murder. The murder is that a client at a upscale wellness spa called Elysium, which is based in an English country manor house, has been found dead. He's been found dead on the lawn of their courtyard with as you'll find out, this is all in the opening chapters, so this isn't a spoiler, with a handheld garden fork embedded in his chest. Uh, and the balcony from which he fell is accessed from a room that is locked and the key is missing. So
Right.
immediately you have an almost sort of locked room style murder, um, and also the question of this body on the lawn. So yeah, that's the murder, that's the mystery, and the reader is, as I say, he takes on the role of a detective and is invited to solve it. One of the things that marks this out as a bit different is because, like I say, it's a full length crime novel and it's aimed at mainstream crime readers
Hmm.
as well as game book readers. So you, me, let's face it, most of the people watching this channel, we all know what game books are. We know how they work. We're used to character sheets, to rolling dice, to making saving throws, that sort of thing. Your average crime fiction reader is not. And so I didn't want to scare those people off. I didn't want them to pick it up and immediately go, stats? Rolling dice? This is Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not interested in that. Instead, I want people who are just, mainstream crime fiction readers, because that's what I do these days. That's most of what I do. Most of my time is spent writing, you know, crime and thriller books. And so I want that audience, that existing audience of mine, to be able to pick this up and feel comfortable. And so what I've done is used what I call clue numbers. If you've ever played a game book that uses code words, you'll be familiar with the basic concept. You know, the idea that
So it's like
something
you.
happens in a game book and it says, "Okay, write down this code word,"
Yeah.
and then later on, a section will say to you, "Do you have this code word written down? If so, turn to page 50. If not, turn to page 100." Um, Clue numbers are that on an industrial scale.
Right.
So every time you interview a suspect, every time you learn something new, every time you find a new piece of evidence or a clue or investigate an area, the book will say to you, okay, write down C3 or T5 or P1 or something like that in your notes. And then many, many entries later on will say to you, we use the conditionals and say to you, do you have P1 written down? Do
So
you
this is
have
like
C3 written down? If so,
a way for the book
go
to
here.
remember, right? This is how you can make sure
Exactly.
that you're actually you're a detective collecting clues and developing the case instead of just having it all in one place, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's
That's
how the
great.
book keeps track of where your investigation is and what clues you've gathered, who you've spoken to, what you've spoken to them about, and that sort of thing. It's the only way to do it. It's the only way to do it in book form, which means that it is, well, to write it was very complex indeed.
Right.
Like, I built a massive flowchart. Obviously, everybody knows that's what you do when you write a game book. Like anybody who's written a game book or attempted to write one knows you have to start with a flowchart. So I did build a flowchart, which alone took me 2 weeks just to build the flowchart because it was so complicated.
How
And
many
then add the clue
references are
numbers in
there?
as well.
Like
What's
how
that?
many different sections are there in the book?
There are, so there are only 200 sections,
Right.
which again, compared to a lot of game books, is actually quite short. Most have, 300, 400, some have a lot more. But that's because a lot of the entries are longer than you'll find in your average game book because, again, it's written like a novel.
Hmm.
So, yeah, 200 sections on this flowchart, but because of the clue numbers, as I say, that's what really made it complex. And so it was, yeah, quite a task to write. But the result, it was worth it. It paid off. The result is something that does make sense and, as I say, keeps track of what clues you've learned as you progress through the book. And I'm delighted to say so far, because we had a lot of proofreaders and copy editors on this, so far, everyone who's read it and got, sort of given me feedback, all the reviews and what have you, nobody's come across any issues in that. And a lot of reviewers have said, like, I don't even know how he began to write this. This is blowing my mind.
That's fantastic. Well, so shortly we're gonna sort of play through the opening section of this, and I think, like you say, it's a full length, it's a proper crime novel, right? It's very in the sort of. Am I right in saying it's kind of in the Agatha Christie kind of mold? That's the sort of drawing room
Sort
mystery,
of.
that kind of space. I know there's been like a
Yeah.
renaissance of the sort of cozy crime world in more recent time, hasn't there?
Oh, there absolutely has. I mean, if you look, oh, it was wrong hand. Sorry, my video's moved. So if you look behind me, you'll see, in addition to Can You Solve the Murder, my Dog Sitter Detective series, which is a modern cozy crime series. Yes, there's been a massive resurgence of interest in that.
Right.
It's not entirely cozy. It's not entirely Agatha Christie. It is set in the modern day. It's not historical in any way, but it's along those lines in that the focus is on the puzzle. That's what this is all about. I mean, it is very much so. That's very much the case in most modern cozies anyway. But in a book like this, in an interactive book, then it's literally the point of the book is the puzzle, is seeing whether you can work out who murdered. Can you solve the murder? It's literally in the title.
Sure.
So yeah, that's very important to this one. And for British, actually for most, sort of overseas as well, but certainly for British viewers, the best kind of comparison I can make is actually something like Midsummer Murders.
Right. Okay. Right.
That's kind of the tone that I was going for with this book. There are humorous parts. There are some larger than life characters. It is set, as I say, in a country retreat. It's not, there's no sort of, terrible blood and gore, and people generally don't sort of swear all over the place and what have you. So it's in that sense, it's a little
Sure.
bit cozy. But there are some mature themes in the book. It's not for children. There are some, discussions of sort of mature subjects, and it deals with those subjects in ways that I hope are, sort of resonant with readers.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm conscious we're having a little bit of a.
Oh, somebody.
Forgive me, Anthony. I think we're having a little bit of a lag, which I suspect might be due to my screen off, and we just have pictures of our beautiful faces instead. I'll let you know connect. So what happens then? So hopefully, as well, but I've done all. So Anthony, were you in way of right now? I know I just asked.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a book from a bookshop. It's simple. This is you don't have to go to a specialist store. You can get this literally from any decent bookshop, any bookshop at all, really. You can order it from. Waterstones have been very good about supporting this book. I've been going around and I'm events at branches of Waterstones in the country. I do what I call Can You Solve Murder Live, which is an interactive event where I've created a new mini mystery, which features the same characters and location as the book, but a completely different murder that the audience at these events has to solve. Those have been going down very well, very popular. But yeah, as I say, you can get it literally at any book.
That's great. So, so it's sort of set in the same world of the book, but a sort of concurrent mystery or a parallel mystery.
Kind of a parallel universe mystery, if you like. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's, as I say, uses the same characters and location, but it's a completely different mystery. So there are no spoilers, because that's the thing. What I didn't want to do was spoil the, any of the sort of options in the book at these events for people who would then go on and buy the book, because that's obviously it's part of why you do these events, is you hope that at the end of it people will buy the book and get it signed. So I didn't want to spoil any of that, and it's really tricky to do a read through with an audience of a book of this length, to sort of you can't pick a section out the middle, you have to start at the start because of the nature of the book. So yeah, I just created a new, as I say, little mini mystery to play out with audiences. And as I say, it's gone down really well. People have really enjoyed it. So I've already done Leeds and Nottingham. Next weekend, I should say, June 29th, I'm at Bradford Literature Festival. July 1st, I'm in Chelmsford. July 2nd, I'm in Fareham Whiteley. July 7th, Edinburgh. July 8th, Newcastle, and then July 25th at Criminally Good Books in York. So if you're in any of those places, you can get tickets online or at those stores. Do come along. It's a good time.
That sounds like terrific fun, and that's a big tour that you're doing there, Anthony. But look, you know what?
I mean, it could be bigger.
Sure. Let's get started with the book, and we'll have some questions as we go when the choices come up, and folks can help me make our choice of what we want to do next in the investigation. Absolutely. And we'll continue to chat whilst people are making those decisions. But if you want to get us started, Anthony, at the start of the book,
I will do. So as I mentioned up front, this is I keep saying it, this is a full-length crime novel, and that means that some of the entries are quite long. That includes the very first section, because that is setting up the murder and the investigation that's to come. So I have made some judicious edits for the benefit of this live audience, but nevertheless, I just want to make people set expectations and make people aware you're going to be listening to me talking at some of these sections. You're going to be listening to me talking for a good 5 minutes. So I hope you enjoy it. So starting obviously with section 1. Oh, and I'm not going to do any accents.
Fair enough.
I am not a voice actor. Your sidekick, Sergeant McAdam, is Scots, but I am not going to attempt a Scots accent. All right, here we go. Apparently, it's a health farm these days. Sergeant McAdam weaves the car at top speed around tight, hedge-lined corners. I believe they prefer the term wellness retreat, you point out. She chuckles. Either way, I don't expect the victim would agree. Try to keep notions like that to yourself when we arrive, Sergeant. Your tone is lightly admonishing, but internally you admit to similar thoughts. When you can think for more than 5 seconds without fearing for your life thanks to McAdam's rally-like driving, that is. She accelerates out of a bend and over a hillock, leaving your stomach somewhere on the ceiling. This is your first case together, following her assignment to your station last week after making a name for herself in Northumbria. When you asked why she spent her career in the English police rather than her native Scotland, she shrugged and said, more action. McAdam is short and wiry, in her mid-30s with dark hair and a ruddy complexion, suggesting she spends a lot of time outdoors. reenacting Hollywood car chases, perhaps. One final death-defying corner later, you reach the gates of Elysium. Not a heavenly reward, but the retreat in question, operating in the grounds and building of the former stately home Finchcote Manor. High stone walls surround the estate, broken only by a wide gate where a sign is emblazoned with the company name bidding you to rediscover your place in nature and revitalise your soul, in a riot of pastel colours and painted roses. A marked police car and two uniformed officers guard the entrance. Recognising you, they wave you through with a nod of acknowledgement. McAdam guns the engine in response, speeding over a squat, low-walled bridge that crosses a narrow river running through the grounds, before continuing up the long, tree-lined avenue to the house. Finchcote Manor is tall and imposing, 4 stories of the region's characteristic pale stone in a Gothic revival style, an unusual ambience for a wellness retreat. Approaching the fountain and paved circle where more police cars are parked, you wonder where the original resident family are now. It can't have been easy giving up such a grand family home for any price. Alongside the police cars is a forensics van where you and McAdam don protective clothing, booties and gloves. You nod in recognition at a tall, broad-shouldered, uniformed policeman who approaches. This is Constable Zwale, a young officer you've worked with before. You introduce him to your new partner, Sergeant McAdam. Constable Zwale has ambitions to become a detective, you add to the sergeant. McAdam looks the young officer up and down, appraising him. Is that so? Then watch and learn. It's all about taking initiative, you see. Yes, ma'am, Zwale says. I won't let you down. Lead on, Constable. Is Dr. Wash here yet? He nods and leads you up the steps to the main entrance. Yes, Inspector, the white tent is already up. Inside, the house feels very different from its classical exterior. Here, old and new live side by side, demonstrated by a modern reception area of pine and shaped marble standing before a traditional wide-carpeted staircase of oak and brass. The lobby is high-ceilinged and wood-lined, with a grand chandelier taking pride of place and a pleasant garden aroma thanks to a variety of plants, large and small, standing in pots around the walls. By contrast, the reception desk holds 2 large computer monitors operated by a pretty young blonde woman. Around you, wall-mounted TV screens advertise the retreat's courses with brightly lit videos. One screen shows a timetable of the day's activities: yoga, swimming, even flower arranging and plant care. Might have to pick up a brochure. A brochure, Sergeant McAdam says. Oh, your kind of place, Sergeant? She snorts. Hardly, but my wife's birthday is coming up, and she'd love it. The manager's waiting for you in his office, Constable Zwale says. Well, he can keep waiting for a while yet, you reply. Let's see the body and crime scene first. Zwale leads you towards a doorway at the rear of the lobby, guarded by uniformed officers. But before you can reach it, a middle-aged blonde woman wearing tennis whites and carrying a racket strides purposefully out of the crowd to block your way. About time, I'm sure, she says. You're the detective, I take it? Her expression is severe. Detective Chief Inspector, McAdam corrects her. Yes, well, terrible business and all, but kindly inform your chaps I have a lunch engagement. You give her your full attention. You have the advantage of me, Ms. Nesbit, of course, she says with the confused air of one who expects to be recognised. Finchcote Manor falls within my constituency. Carla Nesbit, MP, McAdam explains to you, trying to be helpful. Unfortunately, it only makes the woman's eyes grow wider. Really? I don't hold out much hope for this investigation if you can't even recognise your own MP, she sniffs. Before you can explain that you live in a different town, she continues, your bobbies are determined to prevent us leaving, and I won't have it. Ms. Nesbit, I'm afraid that you must, as you say, have it. A man is dead, and it is my job to conduct a thorough investigation and discover what happened. Just think, he might have been one of your constituents. She takes this in. Yes, well, he can't vote now, can he? His family and friends still can, McAdam says brightly, not to mention everyone who hears about this case in the news. Imagine if they learned that his parliamentary representative regarded her lunch as more important than an innocent man's death. Carla scowls at the sergeant. Innocent? That'll be the day. Harry probably just decided enough was enough. Hurry up and get this over with so the rest of us can move on with our lives, will you? And with that, she turns on her rubber-soled heel and walks away. I'm sure he spoke highly of you too, McAdam murmurs as you watch the MP enter the house's east wing. Constable Zwale resumes his lead, taking you through the guarded door into the gardens, a courtyard semi-enclosed by the house's east and west wings. To your right, as you reach the courtyard, close to the wall of the west wing, are more uniformed police. They guard a cordon surrounding the familiar white canvas forensics tent, which stands on the gravel path next to the building. You walk over the grass and duck under the cordon to enter the tent. Inside you find a police photographer, a dead body, and a forensic pathologist standing over the victim. Victim is Harry Kennedy, McAdam says, reading from her notebook. 50 years old, local housing developer. Bit of a bigwig. He booked a week's treatment, staying here alone. And will leave it in much the same manner, the pathologist says, standing up and stretching out her back. Dr. Wash has a pristine cut glass accent, and it's been remarked that she looks as old as she sounds, or vice versa. But with that comes decades of experience and an unflinching accuracy. You've worked together many times and trust her findings implicitly. You introduce them. Dr. Wash, this is Sergeant McAdam, new transfer from Northumbria. They exchange nods in greeting, and then the pathologist stands back to give you a better view of the body. You almost wish she hadn't. The victim fell from the top floor, she says, which is a 15-metre drop. The ground is hard and dry enough at the moment to be unforgiving, hence the mess. The late Harry Kennedy lies on his back, with wide, glassy eyes staring at nothing. He was probably once quite handsome, but his face and head are now badly damaged, his short hair matted with blood and dirt. A crimson pool surrounds him, seeping into the ground and soaking into a bathrobe that used to be white. Beneath the robe, he wears only boxer shorts. What stands out most, however, is something you've never seen before. A handheld gardening fork is embedded deep in Kennedy's chest. McAdam whistles. So much for Carla Nesbitt's suicide theory. Yes, that's highly unlikely for two reasons. Dr. Wash crouches over the body. First is the obvious one. The fork entered directly into the heart, and he was likely dead before he hit the ground. What's the less obvious reason, you ask? She gently opens Kennedy's mouth to reveal a red rose inside. Wonderful, McAdam says, sighing. We've got a nutcase. Dr. Wash gives her a disapproving look, saving you the trouble. You believe it was placed there deliberately, Doctor? You ask. I'd say so, though by whom is a mystery. You'll find a matching plant upstairs on the balcony. And nothing else? No wallet? Not on his person. His phone was found on the ground outside, screen cracked and damaged badly enough that it doesn't power on. I've sent it to digital forensics. Where did he fall from, exactly? Dr. Wash steps out of the white tent and points up to a fourth-storey balcony of stone balusters. Every room on the top floor has one, all the same, and as you peer up, you now notice that these rear-facing walls are much shabbier than the frontage. Stones are chipped at their corners, gargoyles have cracked faces and bodies, and several balconies have broken or missing balusters. Finchcote Manor has undoubtedly seen better days. Forensics have already been over the room connected to that balcony, the doctor continues, so by all means take a look for yourself. Bit of a curious one, as it's supposed to be staff only, and it was locked. I hope you don't mind heights, Inspector. I'll manage. Time of death? Before 10:45 this morning. That's when the manager found him and called 999. Beyond that, hard to say at the moment. Fairly fresh, though. Then there's only one remaining question, you say. How certain are you that this wasn't an accident? Dr. Wash peers at you over her glasses. Gardening forks are not stiletto knives, Inspector. To stab a person with one requires a forceful, deliberate act. I'm confident in my assessment. No, thank you, Doctor. Do call us when you're ready at the mortuary. You leave the tent and note the evidence marker on the grass nearby, showing where Harry Kennedy's mobile phone was found. Constable Zwale offers to lead you inside to the balcony from where the victim fell. He takes you back through the entrance hall, up the wide carpeted staircase and along a corridor lined with rooms dedicated to massage, yoga and similar wellness treatments. You turn a corner into the west wing, then climb 2 more flights of stairs. Finally, you reach the top floor, where the room doors are numbered, like a hotel. I wonder what the victim was doing in a staff-only area, Sergeant McAdam muses. Perhaps the manager can answer that, you reply. We'll talk to him after we've looked at the scene. Zwale stops by a uniformed officer who guards the door of room 312, marked staff only. Further down the corridor, you see what you assume is the victim's bedroom, guarded by another policeman. As you watch, an athletic-looking tattooed man in gym clothes approaches the officer and exchanges some words. The conversation's too distant for you to hear, but it's clear the man wants to get inside that room. The officer sends him packing, though, and you make a mental note to find the tattooed man later. Inspector, Zwale says, bringing your attention back to the staff-only room. Yes, of course. Go on, Constable. I thought you'd want to know that this door was locked when we arrived, and the key's missing from reception, says Zwale. We had to wait for the manager to come and open it. And is he the only other person with a key? Zwale looks embarrassed. Oh, I didn't think to ask. Then do it now and be quick about it, McAdam growls. The constable hurries away. Steady on, Sergeant, you murmur, giving her a look as you grip the door handle. It turns smoothly, and the door opens. Now they've got to learn, she replies. You and McAdam enter to find a musty storage room that smells of mildew and obviously hasn't been used for some time. An old vacuum cleaner stands in the corner, next to a sorry-looking mop and bucket. Metal shelving against the walls holds rusty aerosol spray cans of disinfectant and polish, alongside gardening tools like spades, mallets, and trowels. A dark crimson trail of spots leads to a set of open French windows, giving access to the balcony. What on earth was Harry Kennedy doing in here? McAdam muses. Well, whatever it was, unless he stabbed himself in the chest, someone else was here with him, presumably the same person who locked the door when they left. You cross the room, avoiding the blood spatter. You pass a large ceramic sink, which contains stains of watery blood, and detect a faint scent of strawberry. Most unusual. Now, this is interesting. Look here, Sergeant. The French windows are traditional in style, you notice, made of wood and multi-paned glass, but there are blood smears on the wood, and two of the panes have shattered. Blood-stained shards litter the ground outside. Ah, broken from the inside, McAdam says. That suggests a struggle inside the room. You step out, following the blood trail to the balcony railing, and a red stain on the ground before the balusters. A crimson handprint marks the coping, which is no more than a metre high. It would be easy to fall, or be pushed, and lose one's balance. Look here, says McAdam, the doc was right. Matching flowers. She gestures at two wide clay pots standing against the wall of the house, either side of the French windows. One contains a plant you don't recognise. From the other grows a rose bush with distinctive red flowers. The Elysium sign we passed featured roses in their logo, you say, recalling the gate. Our killer had a choice of flowers, but selected this one. I'd wager that that's no coincidence. Nothing else appears amiss on the balcony. There are no scuff marks or torn pieces of fabric. You'd never know a man had died here if not for the blood and broken glass. And his body lying 15 metres below, of course. Looking out across the courtyard, you see the evidence marker for Kennedy's mobile phone again, but now its position strikes you as odd. Sergeant, you say, gesturing at the marker, how far would you say the victim's phone was found from his body? McAdam peers over the balcony. Looks to be about 3 metres, give or take. That's too far for a simple bounce after he fell, especially on grass. So how did it get there? Well, perhaps the killer dropped it, but then why not drop it alongside his body? Or simply take it with them? The sergeant has no answer, and neither do you. McAdam grunts and looks over to the evidence marker. Well, whoever did it, they overshot it by a wee while. And on the other side of the courtyard, the east wing mirrors this one except for its lower floor. Through its windows you see a swimming pool, running almost the length of the wing. What do you think the view is like from there? You wonder aloud. Could someone in the pool have seen what happened? McAdam peers across the courtyard. Maybe, if they were close enough to the windows. Let's talk to the manager now, you say. Perhaps he saw or heard something as Mr. Kennedy fell. You make your way back into the main part of the house, where you remove and discard your protective clothing. Returning to the entrance lobby, you find the gawping crowd has mostly dispersed. The front desk receptionist you noticed before is now circling the area with a watering can, refreshing its many plants. Constable Zwale accompanies her, talking casually. They seem to be getting on well, and smiles pass between them as they chat. All right, I apologise for the length of that entry, but there you go. Choice time. To join Zwale, and question the receptionist, turn to 23. Or to continue to the manager's office and get a report from the constable later, first write P4 in your notebook, then turn to 135.
Right. Okay. So the mystery is afoot. I mean, that's fun. Obviously it is a longer intro section. A lot of the subsequent sections are a bit shorter, aren't they, Anthony? But
Oh yeah. That's probably the longest section in the book. Yeah.
because you're establishing all of the key initial facts of the case, right? But we've got a couple of options. So we can either chat to the receptionist and join Zwale there, or we can just continue and go to the manager's office, get the report. And then I note we get a P4, so we get one of the first clues if we do that, right?
If you do that, that's correct.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
Right off the bat, straight in with the clue numbers.
That's fun. Yeah, so you're essentially saying, you're receiving an artifact, right? You're receiving a report in that case.
Well, it's actually I won't say exactly why you write that one down.
because then we'd know.
That would give it away. Yeah.
And people in the chat, everyone, if you've got an opinion, if you want us to go to the receptionist or you want us to go to the manager, do let us know, and we'll make that choice in just a moment.
Oh, I see in the chat that audio stopped at some point.
I think it did very, very briefly, yeah.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, and again,
I think that was before I started reading. But
apologies for the technical issues, folks. I think we're reaching the limitations of what my technical setup can achieve at the moment. But we can struggle through because we've got great guests and we've got some interesting mysteries to solve here. Then, so I mean, I like
Indeed.
Anthony that it is set up. Like you said, it's a very classic kind of. You're establishing quite a sort of traditional cozy crime, essentially. Got this maybe faded glory at this hotel spa, and then this murderer is maybe someone. He's a realtor, real estate agent, so maybe or investor in land and stuff. Maybe there's a little bit of shady stuff going on there, and then there's a couple of clues that are already leaping out as okay. Something's not quite right here. Obviously, you've got the rose in the mouth, which is, a bit of a weird calling
very
card.
Obviously not something not right.
Yeah, something not right there. But then the phone's an intriguing one. Because you instantly are suggesting, okay, so was it thrown? Was it planted? Did it? I mean, it could have bounced. It's not totally out of the realm of possibility. So that's quite intriguing. I'm looking forward to finding out some more from that. But I guess I'm going to say, why don't we take that first clue and let's go to the manager's office and get that report.
Okay.
And let's start there.
All right. So, yes, and just to emphasize, you absolutely do have to make notes while reading this book. Like, you cannot solve it without a notebook because you have to write down the clue numbers.
Sure.
And check the clue numbers. And there are puzzles later on that are like, we won't get to them in here, so I'll say this now. There's no way we'll get to them in this read-through. There are encoded text messages you can find, which you have to try and decode. There are other clues and things that you will want to note down as you go through. When think obvious lies that people tell you, for example, or sort of room numbers that may be important.
Oh, that's
fun. So you
yeah,
absolutely do need a notebook.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, we've had Stoney giving us a suggestion, so we're going to go to the receptionist instead. We're going to go and join Zwale and chat to the receptionist and see if we can get some gossip.
Yeah, all right.
So I'm going to delete that P4 that I'd noted down because we have not achieved that clue just yet.
All right, so turn to 23. 22, 23. You approach Constable Zwale and the receptionist. Here's the DCI now, the constable says, introducing you. Inspector, this is Jennifer Watts, the receptionist. She was here this morning. Apparently, she says, you were asking about the key to room 312. The storage room on the top floor, yes. It looked like it hadn't been used in some time. Jennifer nods. That's right. We use different rooms for equipment storage now, so nobody's been in 312 for a couple of years. That's why I was surprised when I saw the key wasn't here. When did it go missing? Was it definitely here yesterday? She shakes her head. Sorry, I couldn't really say. I noticed it was gone after you all arrived and wanted to get inside the room, but here, look. Jennifer waters the final plant on her rounds, then walks back to the front desk and bids you to follow. Stepping behind the desk, she takes a ring of keys from her waistband. One of them opens a locked metal cabinet under the desk, inside which dozens more keys of different shapes and sizes hang on labelled posts. It's kept there, she says, pointing to 312's empty spot at the back of the cabinet. Like I said, it hasn't been used in ages. I make a note of the keys that get borrowed, but nobody asked for this one. It just vanished. Who has a key to this lockbox, you ask? She shrugs. Me and Stephen, the manager. He has spares of every key. Including to 312 itself? Yes, that's how we got the room open for your officers. Jennifer locks the cabinet and returns the keyring to her waistband. So you think to yourself, it's unlikely the manager would have stolen this key when he had his own, unless the purpose was to divert suspicion away from himself. Assuming the key was stolen, though, it suggests Kennedy's murder may have been planned rather than a spur-of-the-moment event. You continue on to the manager's office. So write J1 in your notebook and then turn to 135.
Okay, so we did get a clue after all. Excellent.
Yeah.
Intriguing. And this, I mean, that's, again, we've got a classic of there's enough opportunity that someone could have planned this ahead of time and grabbed that key.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm intrigued to see what the manager's got to say.
Well, let's find out. So we'll turn to 135. You and McAdam walk into the manager's office in the main part of the house facing the courtyard. In contrast to the elegant, minimalist ambiance of the public areas you've seen so far, this room is a maelstrom of folders, files, letters, archive boxes, and reference books balanced between plants and flowers. One shelf contains biographies of successful businessmen, mostly American, some of whom you recognise as having been charged with fraud. The floor and shelves are crowded with pots containing a variety of greenery. At the centre of all this sits a dark-haired man, younger than you expected, in his 30s, wearing an Elysium-branded polo shirt that's too large, hanging off his wiry frame and a chunky digital smartwatch. He stops chewing his nails, stands, and offers his hand. Stephen Chong, he says, God, this is awful. We've already had a coach from Southend cancel. They were supposed to be coming tomorrow. And I've had people all morning telling me they're leaving and want a refund. You'll be gone soon, won't you? No need to hang around once you've taken him away. On the contrary, you say, Mr. Chong, we have every reason to hang around. Mr. Kennedy's death was no accident. Stephen stares at you and McAdam, blinking in confusion. Then realization sets in and he pales, collapsing into his chair. But I thought, who... For God's sakes, we're just a spa. I mean, how... One thing at a time. First of all, I believe it was you who found Mr. Kennedy. He rubs a hand over his face. That's right. I'd been in the greenhouses watering the plant beds. Everything's so parched at the moment. I finished up and was walking back here for an 11 o'clock call, so I came through the courtyard and, well, there he was. Did you touch him? You ask. Yes, sorry. I know you're not supposed to, are you? But it was just so surreal. I couldn't quite believe it at first. He gestures at his ill-fitting shirt. One of your lot took my clothes away. I've had to get spares until I can go home and get changed. So you saw he had the garden fork embedded in his chest. Didn't that suggest to you that it wasn't an accident? Stephen stares out of the window into the courtyard. Well, when you put it like that, it makes me sound stupid. But at first I thought maybe he'd tripped. And then when your officer said he'd fallen from the balcony, well, I thought that explained it. Did you hear or see anything unusual before you found Mr. Kennedy? Asked McAdam, taking notes. Someone crying out? A sound? Anything at all? No, I don't think so. I wasn't paying attention, to be honest. I was just watering the plants. You remember the flower placed in the victim's mouth. Was there anything strange about the body, you ask? What, you mean apart from the fork sticking out of him? God, I don't remember. I don't think so. So, you think, the manager didn't see the flower, unless he placed it there and is now lying. There are a lot of plants here, you gesture to the pots around you, and I couldn't help noticing the polytunnels beyond the gardens earlier. I assume you have an interest? Stephen blinks again, then explains, Sorry, I thought you knew. Elysium is a pioneer in holistic floral therapy. Corolic yoga, angiospermal homeopathy, pollinated bars, that sort of thing. Plus a strict veganic diet, of course. Well, of course, you agree, with a sideways glance at Sergeant McAdam. The flowers we use are all grown here in the gardens as part of our unique brand promise. The past couple of years haven't given us the best growing weather, but we're managing, and now we're almost at the end of the season. Fascinating, McAdam says in a tone very much implying the opposite. Are you seriously saying someone stabbed Harry, then pushed him off the balcony? Stephen asks. It's incredible. I've been meaning to convert room 312 to another bedroom, you know. If I had, maybe it'd still be alive. Try not to think like that, Mr. Chong, you say. You can't blame yourself. Now, I understand the storeroom is normally locked and can only be accessed by staff. Oh, that's right. The only key is behind reception. Apart from the one you used to open it for our officers, you point out. The manager blinks nervously. Oh, well, yes, apart from mine, obviously. McAdam walks slowly around the room, examining the shelf contents and peering at plants. Do you have CCTV inside the house? She asks. Stephen shakes his head. The negative energy would spoil our ambience. Anyway, we've never needed it. Until today, McAdam remarks grimly. If Mr. Kennedy wasn't supposed to be in that storeroom, where should he have been? He was wearing only a bathrobe and underwear. Oh, he had a session booked with Alina Martinescu, one of our massage therapists, but she said he left early. Have you ever had any trouble with Alina? You ask. Oh, no. She's quiet, hard-working, and a good therapist. I sent her to the staff break room. She might still be there if you want to talk to her. How many staff do you have on site? McAdam asks. Well, 20, 25, depending on the day. We can accommodate 80 guests, when they don't cancel by the coach load, that is. You cross the room to the window and look out. From here, the white police tent is visible, with Dr. Wash now directing removal of the body. Who were you calling? You ask casually. What do you mean? You turn to face the manager. You said you were returning to the house for a call at 11. Who with? Well, that's none of your business, is it? I rather think it is, considering this morning's events. Stephen stares at you for a moment, then sighs. Okay, fine. I was supposed to have a call with the bank to discuss our mortgage. This isn't just my business. I own the place. When Finchcote Manor came onto the market, I sold my old nursery, bought the house, and opened Elysium. That must have been expensive. Stephen grimaces. Less so than you might think, because the place needs a lot of repair. And the trouble is, it still does. The roof's a nightmare, the stonework's shot, there's dry rot in the rafters. I sometimes think I must have been mad. Anyway, obviously I've rescheduled that call. And listen, don't speak ill of the dead and all that, but you should probably know that Harry wasn't the most popular friend. Oh, a friend? So you knew him well, you ask. Stephen looks confused, then explains, No, that's what we call our customers. We think of them as our friends. I see. But you're saying Mr. Kennedy didn't have many friends, that is. That's right. I mean, he could turn on the charm when he wanted to, especially with women like our Roses. Despite being in his 50s, Harry seemed to be a wide boy at heart, including being loud and entitled, which annoyed a lot of people. The only person he really got on with around here was Tank Destroyer. McAdam almost chokes. I beg your pardon. Oh, another friend, one of our regulars, actually. Tank made a lot of money in websites and changed his name by deed poll. The sergeant makes a note. And is Mr. Destroyer still here? I assume so. Ask Jennifer. She can access his timetable. You turn to go, but then pause at the door. How about Ms. Nesbitt, the MP? We ran into her earlier, and she assumed Mr. Kennedy had killed himself. How did they get along? From what I saw, Stephen says, they avoided one another like the plague, and if they did run into one another, there was always another argument. Stephen shakes his head. They had a big blow-up yesterday evening, in fact, near the tennis courts. Oh, really? What time was that? Around 7 after dinner. You thank him for his time and leave. Roses, roses everywhere, you say to McAdam. Interesting, isn't it? Did you notice he even used that nickname for his staff? Women like our Roses, he said. Stephen Chong is certainly committed to his unique brand promise. Now, more importantly, we need to ask whether being a rogue and generally disliked was enough to make someone stab Harry Kennedy with a fork, or if there's more to this murder than meets the eye. Now, if you have P4 written in your notebook, turn to 79. But we don't, do we?
We do not, no, because we didn't choose to come straight here.
So otherwise, decide on your next course of action. To question Alina, the massage therapist, turn to 48. To question Carla, the MP, turn to 177. To question Tank, the tech mogul, turn to 73. Those are your choices.
I mean, that did tickle me, Mr. Destroyer. That's very fun. So we can either go. So we've got our first sort of. Well, not we've obviously just had a
First
conversation.
proper choice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
our
yeah.
first proper choice, our first proper suspects, I suppose, or at least potential witnesses, people of interest, I suppose. So we've got Alina, the
Yes.
massage therapist, Carla, the MP, or Tank, the tech mogul. So, if folks have got a preference from those three, let us know in the chat. Uh, I was going to ask Anthony then, so just to go behind the curtain, if we had P4 written in our notebook, this then would presumably, just mechanically speaking, this would be where we now got the update from Zawale, who had been talking to the reception. Is that right? Is that what's sort of happening there?
That is actually exactly it. Yes,
Right.
that's why I didn't want to
Okay.
give it away earlier. Yeah,
Sure.
if you get if you choose that option, you note that down, and then yes, at this point it's like, okay, well, if you have that written down, you obviously haven't spoken to the receptionist
Sure.
yourself, so you get the update from Zwale. But that in itself is like, and that sort of thing happens throughout the book. You get choice about, okay, am I going to do this, or am I going to send McAdam to do it, or whatever, and you can't do everything, but that means you're relying on people like McAdam and Zwale to be your eyes and ears.
Right.
And, they might miss something. You never know.
Of course, yeah, because there was also in that section we kind of had a thought to ourselves, didn't we? Of like, oh, well, maybe this means this, and it's kind of almost a not a clue per se, but a bit of deductive reasoning that takes account of what they're seeing in that scene, and you presumably aren't
Exactly.
going to get that if you've sent someone else to do it. I mean, that's
Exactly so. And the reader might figure it out themselves, but I'm not gonna. It's not in the book to tell them, as you say in that earlier entry. I've put that in the book to make it really obvious to the reader and say, okay, this means this. You've figured that out. And as I say, yeah, if you don't do it, if you hadn't seen something like that with your own eyes, then it is very much up to the reader themselves to figure it out
Yeah.
and work that stuff out. So you really are, this is a proper deductive
Sure.
workout.
And yeah, I mean, gosh, this seems so complicated to have written. I can understand why people were saying I've no idea how you read, because obviously you're taking account of timelines essentially, right? Where you're sort of saying, okay, have you, the detective, yet spoken to X and got
Yep.
that clue already that then allows you to understand something else you're going to see? Gosh, I imagine this must have been quite a brain burner to put together.
Well, so we didn't mention this at the top, but I suppose now's as good a time as any to talk about it. What people may not know, as I say, most people these days know me for writing crime fiction, but I have also been writing video games for the last 20 years.
Right.
I wrote the original Dead Space game.
Right,
I
of
recently
course.
wrote Resident Evil Village. I worked on Shadow of Mordor. I've written lots and lots of games over the years. So I also grew up playing game books. Like many of us of our generation, I grew up playing Fighting Fantasy and Lone Wolf game books and stuff. So, and playing role-playing games. So I do have a really good grounding in interactive narrative. I know how to design it and how to write it and how to build it. Now, that doesn't mean it's not still hard work, of course, but it does mean that I have an advantage, if you like, over a lot of people in, figuring out how to write something like this. I mean, part of the pitch, putting modesty aside, part of the pitch was I'm one of the few people in the world who could write this book because, almost nobody else has my experience in both crime fiction and writing games. There's just not that many of us who do both of those things.
Sure, yeah, the
So-
meeting of two very, very different worlds. I mean, I say very different worlds, but evidently they can be put together in a very interesting way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and that was my hope, exactly. I'd been thinking for a while when I was planning this book, how can I bring these two sides of my career, these sort of two parallel paths that I have, how can I bring them together? And this was the result.
That's fantastic. Well, we were briefly split across the three different suspects, but we've had an extra vote for the massage therapist. So I think we're going to go and see Alina, the massage therapist, and
We
have
have.
that conversation.
Although I do just want to call out Adam Whitehead's comment saying we need to talk to Tank, not because it will help, but because I want to talk to a nutter that would change his name to Tank Destroyer. Yeah, that's pretty much McAdam's feeling as well.
It is very tempting. It is very tempting, but I think we're right to follow the clue. I'm sure we'll get to Tank one of these days.
All right. So to question Alina, the massage therapist, turn to 48. A passing member of staff directs you to the break room in the non-public area of the ground floor. You enter to find a plain and utilitarian room of tables and benches, which, you note with interest, is completely free of flowers. Evidently, the blessings of floral healing don't extend to the staff, and by the looks of things, neither does the maintenance budget. Paint peels from the room corners, while the dinged and scratched furniture has seen better days. You find Alina sitting in a corner and sipping coffee. She's slim and quietly spoken, with a stillness interrupted only when she tucks a stray dark hair behind her ear or sips her coffee. You and Sergeant McAdam introduce yourselves and sit with her to gently ask questions. Alina tells you she's originally from Romania, where she trained as a massage therapist. She came to England 5 years ago with her younger sister Roxana, following soon after and eventually marrying an Englishman. Alina has been working here at Elysium for 3 years. Are you also married? You ask. Do you have a family who can take care of you after today? Alina shakes her head. Roxana is my family. We look after each other. Not wanting to press further, you let the subject pass and move on. Mr. Kennedy had a session with you this morning, is that right? Yes, from 10 till 11. But he left early at past because he had a phone call. You mean someone called him during the session, so he had his phone with him? She shakes her head. No, I mean, yes, he had his phone. I never saw him without it, you know, but he just said he had to go. I wonder why he didn't just book you for half an hour. Why waste an appointment like that? Alina shrugs. It made no difference to him. His package is all-inclusive, so he lost nothing by leaving early. Perhaps not, you think, but booking a full session with no intention of using it may have denied someone else an appointment. It suggests Kennedy had a selfish streak, and you wonder how much that package costs. Did you see Mr. Kennedy again after he left, you ask? Only when he went into the corridor. I saw the tattoo man, Tank, chase after him. You mean Tank Destroyer? Chasing after him, you say. You remember that Stephen said the tech mogul and Harry Kennedy were friends. Tank may have been the last person to see the victim alive. Yes, Alina says. He called to him and they talked. I didn't hear what, but Mr. Kennedy didn't want it, you know? I'm a simple woman, Ms. Martinescu, McAdam says, so I'm confused. Why didn't you try to persuade Mr. Kennedy to finish his session? It's not my place, Alina says. Stephen wants us to call them friends because the house is theirs while they stay. They come and go, you know? So if you didn't go after him, what did you do with that spare half hour? The therapist looks worried. I stayed in my room and took a break. I didn't want Stephen to know. But it's hardly your fault if a client leaves early, is it? McAdam says. No, of course, Alina replies quickly. But I should have told Jennifer I was free to see someone else. Stephen likes us to always be working, for the house to be busy. It's expensive to run. You suspect the key to repeat business is letting people like Harry Kennedy do whatever they want rather than drag people into sessions they're not interested in. But maybe Stephen Chong knows different. Is there anything else you can think of, you ask? Did Mr. Kennedy say or do anything odd during your session, besides leaving early? Alina shakes her head. No, sorry, it was just a massage, you know? I didn't see him again until Stephen was shouting, and then we all saw him on the ground. The therapist doesn't seem to know anymore, so you leave her in the break room. Write A5 in your notebook. If you've already questioned either Carla or Tank, turn to 120, which we haven't. So otherwise, choose one of them to interview. To question Carla the MP, turn to 177. To question Tank the tech mogul, turn to 73.
Excellent. Okay, yeah. So we can now follow up with Carla the MP or track down Tank the Destroyer, the tech mogul. Fun
Tank
to
Destroyer, yes.
Yeah, get the confirmation as well that the tattooed man who was trying to get into Harry's room is also Tank. So we've sort of put those two people together. So, and as Stoney has mentioned there, Tank wanted to get into the victim's room, didn't he? So that is interesting.
You don't have confirmation of
Sure.
that, but yes,
Yes, no, you're quite
it
right.
seems pretty. Yeah,
You're quite right. And this is going to be the danger. I'm going to be assuming left, right, and centre, right, and drawing conclusions. So you're very right to keep us honest. So with
yeah,
one,
and that's always a danger with any kind of puzzle, really, isn't it?
of
Is to assume
course,
nothing.
yeah, no, you're totally right. So the assumption is that Tank is the same person who was the tattooed man, described as a tattooed man who was trying to get into the room. May not have been, of course. But from what Stephen's told us, Tank and Harry were friends, but maybe Carla and Harry were not. They had an argument the morning of, so that's very interesting. So we've kind of got two. Although Tank is supposed to be friendly, maybe he hasn't been recently. It seems from what we're hearing here.
Indeed.
And
Indeed.
then I'm always a little curious. So we now have a window of time for Alina, and as Minimum has said in the chat there, she has a missing half hour. She's lying about that. I think that's a very astute observation, because someone's got a free half hour. That means we can't account for where she was now, and there's no obvious. I know there's nothing we can do with that information right now, but I think that's going to be something worth keeping in mind. So.
And that, by the way, that's a good demonstration. Like the messages in the chat, this is great to see people sort of picking up on these things, because that's a demonstration of what I mean about having to take notes. It's not just about the clue numbers. Those are vital. You do need them. But it's not just about those. It is also about, noticing these things in the text and making note of them, and doing, as I say, your own deductions in your head. So it's really great to see people engaging with that.
Yeah, that is great as well, because I assume there'll be decision points later on where you'll be influenced by those kinds of observations, where you might think, if you've not been paying as much attention, you might not follow up on a clue because it doesn't seem as relevant. But because you've kept an eye out and you've made your notes and you're like, what do I know about this person? That might lead you to go, okay, let's follow this. Let's pursue this particular line of inquiry here instead.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I hope readers do. There was one, as always happens these days with any book release, we sent the book out, advanced copies of the book out to a whole bunch of people, including a lot of Instagram, Bookstagram, influencers types
Sure.
and what have you. And one, forgive me if you watch this because I cannot remember your handle for the life of me, but one of the reviewers posted this amazing video showing her notebook from her playthrough, and I mean she had got about 15 pages of notes. she had gone deep into this thing, but it worked. She did solve it. But yeah, it was amazing to see. I was like, yes, that's exactly the sort of reader that I wanted. This is exactly what I want people to get from this, to feel like they have been the detective and they have figured it out.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I assume that there are like a number of different endings, so it's possible to end without solving it. Are there different ways to solve it as well, perhaps?
So there are 17 different endings.
Wow.
Only one of them is the correct answer.
Right.
Only one of them is the solution. Some of them are dead ends where, things end early and you're either taken off the case, or even in a couple of places you die.
Wow.
But yeah, when you get to the end and you sort of make an accusation, only one of them is correct. Like the solution doesn't change. However, there are different ways to get to that solution. And that's why the back of the book also has a scoring chart.
Huh.
So once you've solved it, you then go on to the, you read the last entry, turn the page, and there is a scoring chart there where, according to what you've done, according to the clue numbers you've gathered, you tot up a total score, and then you find out your detective score at the end. And, there's a range of, like, if you score, below 50 points, you're a detective constable. If you score 50 to 75, you're a detective sergeant, that sort of thing.
That's fantastic. That kind of
So
reminds
even if you solve it, you can go back and
Sure.
try and do it again and get a better score.
That's great. Yeah, some real nice replayability. And it's sort of reminiscent of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective a little bit as well, isn't it? Where you kind of like, are you as good as Sherlock? Like, can you get within the range of clues and details that he needed in order to solve it? That's great.
Exactly so. And one of the other things about the this isn't really a spoiler, but it's it's worth saying about the scoring chart at the end is that some of the clue numbers you write down are red herrings and are worth
Right.
minus points.
Oh wow, well, because you may have been misled or you sort of followed the right.
Exactly.
Oh wow, that's really fun. That's great. Oh my gosh, there's lots to think about. Well,
That's my equivalent of Ian Livingstone's obsession with trying to kill the player.
sure, yeah. So we've had some vote. We've got Stony wanting us to talk to Tank, and I know Adam wanted us to chat to Tank earlier. So it feels like we're going to go and chat to Tank, the tech mogul.
All right. So question Tank the Tech Mogul, turn to 73. Let's do that now. Stephen said that Jennifer, the receptionist, could tell you where to find Tank Destroyer, so you turn to her. She checks her current session booking and directs you to a room on the first floor. Along the way, Sergeant McAdam looks up the Tech Mogul on her phone. Birth name Thomas Ball, she relates. 42 years old, made it big during the second dot-com boom, whatever that was. He ran some kind of website, a resource for computer programmers. She whistles. Oof. According to his Wikipedia page, he sold it to Google for $800 million. Nice. How does that relate to his new name, you wonder aloud? McAdam has no answer. You approach a bright, sunlit room where an instructor leads a group of Elysium's friends in a yoga class. Strong floral scents surround you upon entry. Colourful petals are scattered on the floor, and each practitioner's yoga mat is surrounded by cuttings of a flowering vine. Well, I never did, murmurs McAdam. So this is corolic yoga, you reply. Corolla is simply another word for the petals of a flower, you see. No wonder Stephen Chong is concerned about the health of his plants. You know better than most that appearances can be deceptive, but even if he wasn't the only man taking the class, you're confident you could pick Tank Destroyer out of the crowd. Tanned and muscular, his arms and chest are covered with tattoos of intricate patterns, abstract shapes that flow into and around one another. His neatly trimmed beard and bald head frame a deeply lined face, and one of his eyebrows is pierced. Then you realise that not only does he stand out, but you've seen him before. It's the same man who was arguing with the officer outside Harry Kennedy's bedroom earlier. You apologise to the instructor for interrupting and invite Tank to the room next door. It has the same layout and large sun-gathering windows overlooking the manor grounds, but is not in use. Tank brings his yoga mat and cuttings with him, laying them on the floor before he proceeds to continue practicing yoga while you talk. Mr. Destroyer, what was your relationship to Harry Kennedy, you ask? He was a good laugh, Tank says, stretching on the mat. Not that I don't like the peace and quiet here, but it's nice when someone comes along and shakes things up a bit. Shakes things up how? Tank shrugs. People treat this place like a monastery. But Harry didn't take things too seriously. He was a bit of a troublemaker. And what did the other friends, think of that? Can't say I cared enough to notice. For a man who apparently comes here regularly, the tech mogul seems singularly uninterested in what goes on at Elysium. When was the last time you saw Mr. Kennedy? McAdam asks. Last night. We played a game of tennis, took a hot tub, then went to bed. Separately, he adds, winking at her, in case you were wondering if you've got competition. McAdam rolls her eyes. Would you have preferred it to be together, you ask? I saw you earlier attempting to get into his bedroom. Tank frowns. I loaned Harry some gym gear while he was here, that's all. It's got nothing to do with his death, but your copper wouldn't let me go in and get it back. You will when our investigation is complete, you would reassure him. What should we be looking for? T-shirts? Jogging bottoms? He switches position, arching his back in what looks like a very uncomfortable manoeuvre. Try a very expensive hydration vessel and a fitness band monitor. I don't want any of your lot nicking them either. I know what you're like. Our officers work to the highest standard, you say. If those items are in his room, they'll be catalogued and stored until we can safely release them. Now, can you tell us what you and Mr. Kennedy discussed last night? Anything significant? Tank shrugs. An impressive physical feat in his current position. Business, investments, cars, normal stuff. And there was nothing unusual about his behaviour? Did he say or do anything odd or out of character? Quite the opposite, I'd say. A row with Nesbitch, tennis and tub with me, then off to bed. Textbook. Do you mean Carla Nesbit? You ask. McAdam tuts quietly at the derogatory nickname. Tank laughs. Who else? You know she threatened to block his plans for a new housing development, right? next to the Borderlands estate. She's been spouting some nonsense about a floodplain. New construction would really benefit the town, but that's what politicians do, isn't it? They stand in the way of good men trying to do good work. Are you speaking from experience? He adopts a one-legged pose with arms outstretched. Oh, you're a sharp one, Inspector. I'll have to watch myself around you. So I might as well tell you, since you'll find out soon enough, we were going to invest in each other's businesses. Tank's expression turns serious. That's why I don't understand why he'd jump off a building. When I left him yesterday, he was in a good mood. He didn't jump, you explain. I'm sorry to have to tell you that Mr. Kennedy's death wasn't an accident. He was murdered. Tank tumbles to the ground, his balance lost. His hands fly to his mouth in shock. No way! Oh, my days! You continue, therefore, I must ask where you were between 10:30 and 11 this morning. Immediately, Tank stiffens, wary and defensive. A few places, actually. I went for a run, came back, jumped in the pool for a dozen lengths, then had a shower and went to my room. I was there until Flower Boy started shouting and screaming. Flower Boy? You know, the head honcho, Stephen Chong. And what time did you start swimming exactly? I don't know. Since I retired, I don't wear a watch. Were you alone? Was anyone else in the pool? McAdam asks. No, I passed a few people here and there on the way, but there was never anyone else in the pool at that time of the morning. That's why I like it. I thought you just said you didn't know what time it was. Tank glares at the sergeant in reply. You also said you're retired, you point out. So how come you have a business for Mr. Kennedy to invest in? He sniffs. Nobody ever really retires in tech. I'm building an AI-powered startup, and Harry saw the potential. Now, is there anything else? Or have you spoiled my day enough already? One more question, if you don't mind. Was yesterday the last time you spoke to Harry? Or did you see him again this morning? Not a peep since last night, Tank says, frowning. If you have A5 written in your notebook, turn to 44. Otherwise, turn to 178.
Well, so we do have A5 in our notebook because we chatted to Alina. So we would be turning to page 44. But before we do that, I guess it's probably worth pointing out that there's plenty to dislike about Tank the Destroyer. Yeah, quite a character indeed. But yeah, should we jump to 44 and see what that extra section may be?
Yeah, I mean, I do this in my cozy crime novels as well. Like, I love populating stories like this with larger than life characters who are. I mean, somebody in the chat, minimum 2000 in the chat, just says this guy is full of it.
Yeah,
which
absolutely right.
Which is a fair assessment of Tank, I think. All right, so we do have A5 written down, so we're turning to 44. Are you sure, you ask? Because we have a witness who saw you arguing with him in the corridor this morning, not long before his body was found. Tank glares at you, wide-eyed with anger. In fact, Mr. Destroyer, you may have been the last person to see Harry Kennedy alive. Tank seethes with suppressed rage, and given his physique, you can't help wondering how easily he could overpower someone. That bloody therapist, isn't it? He says. You were seen chasing after him, you reply, ignoring the question. Not something that would easily slip one's mind. Tank takes a deep breath to control his anger. Yeah, all right, I wanted that gym gear back. I told you, it's expensive and he wasn't using it. McAdam obviously does not believe him. Really? If that's all you were arguing about when he told you to get lost, why tell us you hadn't seen him? Because I knew you'd think it meant I did him in, Tank sneers. And I was right, wasn't I? I've dealt with you like before, you know. No imagination. That would have been quick thinking, considering that until 2 minutes ago, Tank thought Kennedy had killed himself. So is that due to his sharp computer whiz mind? Or is he simply lying? Either way, it doesn't seem like you'll get any more information from him at this time. Thank you, that's all for now, you say, turning to leave. But then you pause and ask, actually, there is one more thing, if you'll forgive my curiosity. What prompted your choice of new name? A sly smile forms on Tank's face as he gathers his yoga mat and vine cuttings. Long story. Let's just say it involves a bachelor party with some old school chums, a decommissioned tank range in Dorset, and a little too much champagne. McAdam snorts. How the other half live, eh? You thank Tank for his time and let him return to the class next door. Write T6 and T8 in your notebook. If you've already questioned either Alina or Carla, turn to 120. Otherwise, choose one of them to interview. But we have, haven't we?
We did. Yeah, we spoke to Alina.
I'm just catching up on the chat here, seeing what people are saying about Tank. I don't know what a hydration what's it is, but I don't like the guy who owns it.
I mean, very good point for a minimum as well. This guy's too rich to worry about getting something back. So, you know, why it is he's a bit too eager to reclaim something that apparently, you know, if he's got 800 million, that does seem quite strange. And then Nat, quite, well, I mean, can we do a reconstruction of the murder with Tank fatally? But good point. No watch, no fitness tracker, so that's all very strange. No apps. But yeah. But I mean, I think, Anthony, we're probably out of time, so we may well need to leave it there with Tank as our last suspect questioned.
Well, I tell you what. If you can just bear with me, because this is actually part of the mechanics.
Okay.
So this next bit is interesting.
Oh, okay.
So I'll read you the full options again. So it's write T6 and T8 in your notebook.
Great.
If you've already questioned either Alina or Carla, turn to 120, which we have.
Yep.
So you turn to 120. You return to the main entrance hall and cross to the reception desk. Do you have any guests, sorry, friends, who are due to leave today or tomorrow? You ask Jennifer. Let me check. She clicks around on her computer. Yes, 6 people. She prints off a list for you. One name immediately stands out, Carla Nesbitt MP. You turn to look around the lobby for Constable Zwale. This would be a good task for him, but you don't see him anywhere. And then you hear, just tell me who's in charge, for heaven's sake. I'm his wife. Now, we will leave it there, but the mechanical part of that is when the late Mr. Kennedy's wife enters the scene, you can no longer interview those suspects.
Right. That's
so you had 3 choices, but you can only interview 2 of those 3 people in that particular scene. I mean, obviously you'll get chances to talk to them again later,
right.
But in that particular scene, yeah, you can only actually talk to 2 out of the 3 people before Flora Kennedy arrives.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
And there's a few moments like that throughout the book. Yeah.
So like a ticking clock. So the actual day is progressing. So
exactly.
I mean, that's great as well, because then that gives a weight to your decision, and even more of a weight, because you have to decide the priorities, right? You can't just be, I'm going to speak to everybody eventually, and then move on to the next bit.
Yeah. Exactly so. And yes, it means that it gives the feel that the world, as you say, is progressing around you, that the suspects, the witnesses, the case is moving along around you. It's not all, a lot of game books, and this is, I love game books, like I say, I grew up reading them. This is not to knock them, but a lot of game books are very much focused on what you're doing. And it's like everything else is kind of waiting for you to act. And what I wanted to get across here was the idea that that's not the case, that things are progressing whether you're there or not. And part of the puzzle that you have to figure out is where to be, to be in the right place at the right time in order to catch the killer.
Right, sure, yeah, that's great. That's really good. So yeah, the world continues in the background, and I mean, I assume maybe you can even, if you can get kicked off the case for dilly-dallying or what have you, and you're not getting enough progress quickly enough, that kind of thing.
Well, I don't want to spoil anything.
Sure, yeah, no, you can't.
Off the case, as I say.
sure,
I
yeah.
don't want to say why.
No, but that's fantastic. Well, I mean, that is terrific fun, Anthony, and I marvel at just the complexity of being able to put something together that allows you to simultaneously do like a satisfying murder mystery in the traditional mold, but also to gamify it, but with all of those sort of bells and whistles that we've talked about there. So being able to keep the plot moving forward, and you have agency within that, but the world doesn't stop. And then you've got all these clues, so it actually remembers who you've spoken to and all that sort of stuff. Really fantastic work. This is great. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah. I'm actually planning the second book as we speak. Like, I literally was working on the flowchart for book 2 this morning.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. So I'm suffering through all of that complexity all over again.
I'll bet. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So, I mean, that then sort of continues the kind of continues the series essentially. So a sequel of sorts.
Yeah, yes. So the second book will be the same police. So
Right.
you're the inspector again. Sergeant McAdam will be there again. Zwale, Dr. Wash, the same police cast, but a completely different case in a completely different place with a completely different set of witnesses and suspects and what have you.
Fantastic. So it's the next episode of Midsummer Murders or Murder She Wrote,
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
exactly.
Awesome. Oh, that's great. And you said, just remind us, Anthony. So you're doing some talks around the country. You're doing some readings and stuff like that.
Yes, well then they're not exactly readings. So yeah, I fear this may have been one of the bits that was when we lost video and audio. So
Sure.
I'll say it again. Yeah, I'm doing what I call "Can You Solve the Murder" live in a number of venues, mostly Waterstones branches around the country, and that is an interactive event where I have created a little new mini mystery involving the same characters and the same locations as the book, but a completely different murder mystery with a different victim and a different solution and everything, so that you can, and this is for the audience at these events to solve, so that there are no spoilers. So you can attend one of these, you can solve that particular murder and not be spoiled on anything in the book. And we've done a few of them so far. They've gone down really well, been really popular. I am next doing it 29th of June, so that's next Sunday. I'm at Bradford Literature Festival. July 1st, I'm at Waterstones Chelmsford. July 2nd, Waterstones Fareham Whiteley. July 7th, Waterstones Edinburgh. That's Edinburgh West End, the one on Princes Street. July 8th, Waterstones Newcastle. And then July 25th, I'm at Criminally Good Books in York. So if you're near any of those places and fancy coming along, you can meet me, you can get a copy of the book, but more importantly, you can take part in this little mini mystery that I've created. And if you win, you get a sticker. Do come along because it's a lot of fun.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well,
You don't get a sticker for solving the book, unfortunately.
I'm very much looking forward to continuing this, to continuing reading the book and finding out if I can solve the murder. It reminds me, in a very, very positive way, of. Do you recall Deck Chair Detectives, Anthony? Have you ever read any of those? The
No.
Osborne puzzle books, which were.
right.
It's great. So Osborne puzzle books were fantastic, like puzzle adventures. Every single page had a sort of all these illustrated adventures with loads of cool mysteries. They then did a little series, and these were for young readers. So this is many years back when I could be described as a young reader. But it was you built up the clues over the course of the book, and then at the end you weren't allowed to turn the final page until you accused someone of the crime. You'd built all your clues up, investigated it,
Right.
and you had this one opportunity to get it right. So obviously it was a bit more limited in this, but I've got very fond memories of those books. And yeah, again, just really fun stuff.
I have never come across those. I might have to try and seek one or two of those out and see.
They
what
were
they're
good. I mean,
like. So was that a case of?
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, was that a case where you literally just guessed and then turn the page and find out if you're right or not?
So yeah, you have that final opportunity to basically you have to unmask the villain essentially, and they're kind of Scooby Doo-esque kind of mysteries. That sort of like who's responsible, and there's a couple of puzzles along the way, but yeah, you get to the second to last page and it's like, right, who do you think did it? And then you turn the page once you've said who you think it was.
Right.
So yeah, it was just a really nice way of doing it.
Yeah, cool. The way the accusations work in this is a bit more complex.
Sure,
in
I
keeping
would
with the rest
imagine
of
so.
the rest of the book. But I mean, it is still essentially that. When you get to the final scene, you make an accusation. But then how that plays out is a bit more complex than that, because it depends on what clues you've gathered, who you're accusing, sort of what evidence you've accumulated, and so on.
Right, of course. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Fantastic. Well, hopefully I get to the end and I can accuse someone, and then I will share back with folks who whether I got it right or wrong. I won't spoil it for folks, but whether or not I get it right or wrong. But Anthony,
And what your detective score is.
and indeed my detective score. Yeah, that's right. But thank you so much, Anthony, for joining us to chat through a bit of behind the scenes stuff, and for doing the fantastic reading of Can You Solve the Murder. It's available right now, isn't it? People can go and in the UK at least, you can go and buy this right now.
Yes, in the UK.